Yahweh said to Jeroboam in verse 37 of 1 Kings 11, "And I will take you, and you shall reign over all your soul desires, and you shall be king over Israel." Look, when Yahweh tells you, "I'm going to make you king over everyone, and you can get everything you want." What do you want? It's only a limit. What you get is only is limited only by what you desire. But Jeroboam got nothing. He blew his blessing. Today, I want to talk about a lesson from Jeroboam and how he blew his blessing, and find out what we can do to avoid having the same tragedy. Let's start in verse 1 of chapter 11, 1 Kings. My name is Brandon Clayton, and I like to share bits of my quiet time as I go through here. And I'm hoping that as we read through this story, it'll reverberate in our lives today, and we can understand how we can make sure we don't miss our blessing and blow this wonderful opportunity that Yahweh's laying out before us in our lives now. Let's pick up with a little bit of context, remembering Solomon. So I don't know if you know the story or not, but the kingdom used to be united, all one kingdom, and now Solomon, it says in verse 1, loved many foreign women along with the daughter of Pharaoh, and so on. And what happens is that Solomon's desire and love for these women ends up causing the kingdom to be torn apart. So in this verse 3, it says, "In his heart and his wives turned away his heart, and his heart was not wholly true to Yahweh his God." So Solomon did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, and did not wholly follow Yahweh. So what eventually happens is a prophet comes and says that the kingdom will be torn away from Solomon. And that's where we're picking up in the gist of our story. So if we move down in this story, he's talking about he's going to tear it out of his hem, and Yahweh raised up for him an adversary, and people are coming against him because Yahweh is exacting his justice that he said he was going to do. Eventually, well, actually, before we get there, Jeroboam is made a servant, because he's an able man doing great in the service of Solomon. He's made a servant of Solomon, and a prophet, Ahijah, or Ahiah, probably in Hebrew, comes to him and says the following. We're going to pick up in verse 29. It says, "And at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him on the road. Now Ahijah had dressed himself in a new garment, and the two of them were alone in the open country. Then Ahijah laid hold of the new garment that was on him and tore it into 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, 'Take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, Behold, I am about to tear the kingdom from the hand of Solomon, and will give you 10 tribes, but he shall have 1 tribe, for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen out of the tribes of Israel, because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, Milcom, the god of the Ammonites, and they have not walked in my ways, doing what is right in my sight, and keeping my statutes and my rules, as David his father did.'" Now, this is another side note that I always like to emphasize here. Solomon is losing it. You know, we're talking about blowing the blessing. Solomon's losing the thing that God has blessed him with. He could have been so much greater, so much more greater. He could have had this and that type of life and it been in abundance. However, there is a stipulation. There is a condition when it comes to the blessings of Yahweh. And he will continue to say these words: "If you obey my commands with your whole heart and fully in all these matters." Regardless, listen to this, regardless of what the nations are doing around you, right? So I have chosen, because you have forsaken me and worship Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians. Like, we have to be careful not mixing and intermingling the traditions and practices of the nation that we live in and the nations around us. And I know we don't have statues and such, but there's idolatry that is resurrected and lifted up all around us. And it's easy if I just mention media, social media, movies, music. There's plenty of things that are lifted up that is an abomination to Yahweh. Some of the movies, most movies that are created by men and women who do not have in mind what Yahweh has in mind. So when they share their media, their music, their craft, it's coming from a mind that does not have whole things in mind. the video games that are created. We have to be sure we're not dressing, we're not participating, we're not getting involved in those things. Yahweh says, I don't care if it's popular or trending. I need you to be holy and set apart. So he's being called to account to not doing so. And another point is on that is he would have been lauded and lifted up all around. I mean, as the king, nobody's giving him a hard time. Why? Everybody's doing this, and this is the thing you do. No, so just because no one is saying anything doesn't change Yahweh's heart about it. Nevertheless, I will not make the whole kingdom out of his hand, take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him a ruler all the days of his life for the sake of David, my servant, whom I chose, who kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom of his son's hand and will give it to you, 10 tribes. Yet to his son I will give one tribe, that David my servant may have always a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I've chosen to put my name. So he's going to take 10, because there's 12 tribes. He's going to take 10, give it to Jeroboam, and take one and give it to his, leave it for his son, and because of the name of David and how great he is and what he's trying to do through David. So at this point, a lot of people will ask, what about the one? Where's the other one that's missing? And it's likely Benjamin. I believe Benjamin was one of the smallest tribes, and it was kind of assumed into Judah. And so that's likely where that other tribe is. And verse 37 is where I started off. And I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires, and you shall be king. Think of hearing those words. Think of Yahshua, Jesus, or Yahweh himself, looking at you in your face, or a prophet being sent on his account, looking at you in your eyes, saying, I'm going to take you. I don't care what your situation is right now, where you're working at, where you are financially, where you are in your relationships, in your characters. I'm taking you. And when God says I'm taking you, believe he said, I'm taking you and I'm about to do something with you. This is not just an opinion. This is not just a feeling. He's telling you, I'm going to take you. I got a promise for you. I'm doing something with you. And what confidence, what excitement we'll have. We wouldn't care about where we are at that point in life, because we know that we have a promise that we can take to the bank. We can say, God says, I'm taking you, and I'm going to do some great things with you. And the part that I love, you shall reign over all your soul desires. Look, I used to be a part of the camp that would think that God has already partitioned out everything he has, and it's going to be just this way. Matter of fact, I was one of those who would say, if it is to be, it's because God has made it so. That's the way. If it happens, it's because God wanted to. If it doesn't, because he didn't want it to. That's not true. Because he's telling him over and over in the script, telling us over and over in the scriptures, and telling him right now what your soul desires. Where is the limit of what you desire? If he asks you right now, what is your soul desire? What do you want? What's the limit of it? What do you want? What would you ask for? Now, I challenge you, however you're answering that question, because oftentimes we answer it in such a modest way. I want $1 million, or I would love to have a vacation. We think so small. He says, whatever your soul desires, he says, I'm able to do immeasurably more than you can ask for and imagine. And all you can think about is health. All you can think about is paying your bills. All you think about is a week of a vacation. You think the smallest. He said, whatever your soul desires, I got you. I'm taking you. What do you want? You know, it's like when talking with my children. What do you want? I want to know, what do you want? I have a 2-year-old. I'm like, she starts to whine and feel like, what do you want? Tell me, what is it that you need? It's not that everything is partitioned out already, and this is exactly what you get. What we get is often an item of a function of what we desire. What do we need? What do we desire? What are we asking for? Don't limit him, Father. Don't limit him, guys, because of our faithlessness. But press him. You know, I sometimes wonder if our angels that are ministering to us, are ministering with us, that he's given us, I wonder if they're bored, because our requests are so small. He says, I give you whatever your soul, and the promise still stands. He says, I have a plan for you to prosper you, to give you hope in the future. He says, you're going to do more without me, with my Holy Spirit, than I was when I was here. But I wonder how bored he is, or our angels. Like, we're not being asked to do anything. We're asked for the smallest issue. It took 2 angels to destroy a whole city of Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 angels, if I remember correctly. That's it, a whole city. What is my angel doing? What is the Spirit of Yahweh doing with and around me because of the request that I'm making? Elijah the prophet was so bold as to say, put water around the sacrifice before we burn it up. No, pour some more. He was soaking it with water. Like, this doesn't even make sense. This is really, you're like, oh, I wonder if Yahweh was in heaven thinking, yeah, this is it right here. Now he's pressing it. He's pushing it. He's showing that I'm all powerful and I can do it. This is something that's going to be great. But I wonder, what kind of prayers are we praying? That we press God, that we push God? Are they global? Do they span generations? Do they take us out of our comfort zones, out of where we're working or where we're going to school, of our relationship? Do they press us even bigger than we can think of? Or are they still small and we're trying to go day to day? Give me this car. I want this house, and give me something to eat, and heal this person. And all those things are great. But do we ever think outside of that? So I just want to, I couldn't miss this point than to talk about you shall reign over what you desire. Is that all you wanted? That's all you get. Because that said, that's what you desire. You shall be king. And again in verse 38, as he said to Solomon, if you will listen to my command, listen to all that I command and will walk in my ways and do what is right in my eyes by keeping my statutes and my commands as David, my servant, did, I will be with you and will build your sure house as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. There's a condition. There's a condition. I love it. I love it a lot of times in preaching and sermons and lessons. We love to get excited about the promise. But there's a condition to the promise. There's a if. If you do this, if you do your part, then I'll make sure your house is well built. If you do your part, then you get all that your soul desires. If you do your part in following what I told you to do, these blessings will be assured to you. But you got to do your part first. We like to claim the blessings and embrace the blessings and talk about the saints and what he's promised us. But there was a condition attached to these promises. There's a condition that we need to follow and obey him. So let's make sure we're doing that. So I want to summarize what happens next. Solomon dies. His son Rehoboam comes into power. Rehoboam chooses poorly in trying to get advice on how to lead the people. Instead of listening to the elders who say you should be more gentle than your father, he takes the advice of the younger people who says you should be more harsh. In doing so, as it says here, he took the advice of the young man. In doing so, the people turned against him and said, yeah, we don't want to follow this guy. This guy, oh my goodness, what's going on here? In verse 15, we learned that it was from the hand of God, which we already knew. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about Yahweh, that he might fulfill his word, which Yahweh spoke before Ahijah the Silonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And when all Israel saw that the king that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, what portion do we have in David? And overall, they ended up turning from him. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. What a surprise that Yahweh has brought about the events exactly as he said they would happen. And you got to imagine during this time, where's Jeroboam? Jeroboam has been called to be king, but he's not king. He's a servant of the king, servant of the king's son now. But he's servant of the king. What do you do in the meantime? When God has called you and put something in your heart of greatness and you don't see the fulfillment of it. I'm supposed to be king. He says, I get the desires of my heart. I get to reign as much as I want to desire. I'm not even king. How is this going to work? But he has to wait in the meantime. And this what happens in the meantime that makes us struggle often, because you put something in our heart and we can't see it. Where is it? I struggle with that oftentimes as I'm thinking about, I have so much in my heart, so much I want to give. I should be here by now. From what I've been given and downloaded in my spirit, I should be here. But what do you do in the meantime? And I want to look at Jeroboam. What did he do in the meantime? So Jeroboam ends up leaving to another city with this same promise still in his mind, with the word still reverberating in his ears. And then it says in verse 25, then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. And he went out from there and built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, watch this now, he said in his heart, now the kingdom will turn back to the house of David. If this people go up to offer sacrifices in the temple of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, to Rehoboam, king of Judah. And they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. What just happened? In the meantime, while he's waiting, he's thinking. He's thinking, man, you know what's going to happen? If they keep having to go back to Jerusalem, because you have to go back to Jerusalem to the temple to make these sacrifices, he says eventually their people's hearts are going to turn. And when they turn, they're going to kill me, and I'm not going to be king. What happened? Did God tell him that? Did Yahweh tell him that? See, the fruition of what was given him has still not come to be, and he started trying to figure things out himself. So in verse 28 it says, so the king took counsel and made 2 cows of gold. He took counsel. Yeah, he got some advice and made 2 cows of gold. Well, he got some advice. I've seen some people say, well, as long as you get some advice, getting advice is not necessarily a good thing. Getting wholly good advice is a great thing, and make sure it balances out with the Spirit of God. So he got some counsel, but the counsel of men obviously were in the same spirit that he was. Yeah, we got to protect our kingdom. But did you forget? Yahweh says, I'm going to take you. I'm going to make you king. I'm going to give you desires. What are you doing? I told you I got a promise for you. He told you he has a promise for you. He put it in your heart. What are you doing? Wait for the Lord. Wait for Yahweh. Do not take this matter in your own hands. I know what I'm going to do, because if I don't do this, I got to do. This is not time for you to get your hands all in it. He told you he was going to make sure it happens. We don't revert to worldly measures and ways in order to bring about what God has already promised you. It's yours. So he took these 2 cows of gold, and he said to the people, you have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And he set one on Bethel and the other he put in Dan. Then this thing became a sin for the people, went as far as Dan to be before one. He made also temples on high places and appointed priests from among all the. Look at this. He's making temples. Who is he, God? He's making temples. He's appointing priests who were not even of the Levites, who were supposed to be the priests. And Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offers he offers sacrifices to the altar. He even made up a day that looked like the day that they were supposed to be celebrating in Israel, in Jerusalem. He says, I'm going to copy and paste what you guys are doing here, and it's so that you can make sure you stay where I am. This is such a good lesson. This is such a good point we can't miss. Satan does not create. He copies. He's not in the business of creation. He can copy. He can give you a rendition. He can give you something that's a deceitful piece, but he can only copy. So he copied these days and said, this is just like those days. If you look at a lot of our holidays, it's just like that. And I don't have the time to get into the studies, but I researched Christmas. Christmas came from a lot of pagans. It was not a biblical, it was not a God ordained. It was copying some other practices. Halloween, don't even have to say much about that. Easter, I was surprised. Even the word Easter came from the goddess Estar. You got to look this stuff up. We're copying and pasting and trying to mesh them together. He says, no, this is about the same. Where'd the bunny come from? Where's the stained eggs? Oh, my goodness. To learn that they would kill babies, let their blood run, and then put the eggs in the blood of the baby, doing what we call now Easter, and we're celebrating. How did this get mixed up? How we get mixed up from Passover, which is where this really should be. So I don't have time to get into that, but he copied it. Why? To win the hearts of the people over to him. What's going on? How did he lose this blessing and turn it into a messing, if you will? Fear. He got afraid. He started leaning on his own understanding. He became fearful of what could happen. God didn't tell him that. He just thought in his heart, well, what if? And then sometimes, have you ever gone to just a dark place just thinking about that what if? What if my kids? Well, what if this job? What? That stuff don't get us nowhere. Look, I got to stand on the promises of God. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how Rehoboam's going to lose power, and this is looking like it's going to work. This job is not looking like it's going to work. My relationship with my marriage with my kids and my job, whatever it is, don't look like it's working out. I got to take the matters into my own hands, and that's what he did. As Dr. Phil says, how's that working for you? So he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the cows that he made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he made. He went up to the altar that he made. You get the point? He's doing this. He's putting all his hands into it, and he's like, I gotta take it. I gotta move this. He went up to the altar that he made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, in the month that he devised in his own heart. And he instituted a feast for the people of Israel and went up to the altar to make offerings. He could not wait any longer. He had to get his own hands into it. Man, it's tough watching a situation where you're supposed to be in a better relationship. You're supposed to be promoted. You're supposed to be richer than you are. So you're like, I got to take matters into my own hands. I got to make this happen. I'm tired of waiting. Maybe I should do something. And now his hands are stained with blood. His hands are stained with the abomination from Yahweh. Now a man of God comes and confronts him about this. And a long story short, he gets upset with the guy. His hand shrivels up because he points at him saying, get out of here. And of course that didn't work. But I'll let you read that yourself. But what I was amazed at, as you get to the end of the story, this prophet that was sent to him was not obedient to God, and he was killed. And even after this, it says in verse 18, and he said to him, oh, no, that's not it. Let me go back a little further. After this thing, in verse 33, after this thing, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but made priests for the high places again from all the people. Even after watching what Yahweh did to that prophet who didn't obey. He said, you still don't get it? Solomon, I love Solomon. He renamed him Jedediah, the beloved one, because I loved him so much. But even Solomon, whom I love, I will not depart from my word. I'm still going to hold to my word. And you're going to get the consequences of that. After this thing, Jeroboam did not turn his evil way, but made priests for the high places again. And so whether it be Solomon, whether it be with the prophet, Jeroboam still not getting the message. Disguise yourself. At that time, Abijah, the son of Jeroboam, fell sick, and Jeroboam said to his wife, arise and disguise yourself, that it not be known that you are the wife of Jeroboam, and go to Shiloh. Behold, Ahijah the prophet is there, who said of me, I should be king over this people. Take for you 10 loaves, and he will tell you what has happened. Jeroboam's wife did so. She arose, Shiloh, and basically when she got there, it's so humbling. He says through that prophet, look, behold, I will bring harm upon the house of Jeroboam, and will cut off from Jeroboam every male, both bond and free in Israel, and I will burn up the house of Jeroboam as a man burns up dung until it's all gone. Look, what I'm trying to get at is because of his disobedience, his whole family gets affected. His child ends up dying, and she said when your child, hey was here, hey, look at you, mom, hey. But when you hit the threshold of your house, when you get the threshold of your house, your child's gonna die because of your sins. That's tough. Generations are going on from your lineage, from your seed, and are being affected by your poor choices. This cannot be. Look, I just wanted to leave us with that, guys. We got a blessing that we got a promise that he's given us. And in the scripture that it was so fitting to close with, Solomon's own words. He says in chapter 3 of Proverbs, my son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commands, for length of days and years of life and peace that will add to you. For length of days and years of life and peace will add to you. Look, if you keep my commands, which were the commands from Yahweh, let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness. Be faithful to Yahweh. Be faithful to your promises. Be faithful to your family. Be steadfast and not wavering. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. Jeroboam leaned on his own understanding, and he thought, I figured this will work if I do this, and don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and turn away from evil. It will be a healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. What wise words coming from a man who's tried it all, who had all the money, who had all the women, who had all the land and all the power. He says, look, trust in Yahweh, because it's going to be healing for you and refreshment to your very bones. There is your health. Your health is in it. Your longevity is in it. How fitting it is to close in the words of Solomon. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you. Have a great day.